Good morning. Today I have manually appliqued the Hippy van. I did 3 sides. I didn't do the 4th one because it's the same as this and it's already like a 50-minute video. But I will show you how to do this and how to place them without an embroidery machine. And then you too can make the Hippy van. All right, stay tuned, guys. Before I start actually sewing, I just want to kind of quickly talk about how I cut this out. So you can print off the actual pieces in paper, and then I've obviously just cut around them. But some of them I've cut maybe how you wouldn't expect. So for the wheel, I cut a whole wheel, and then I cut out the white wool tire part, and then I've also cut out the hubcap. So I'm going to stitch them all onto the wheel so that the black keeps showing up where I want. So I did that to both the wheels, and I also did it to the front headlight. So I cut out a bigger circle of the silver, and then I'm going to stitch that on there. So you're going to get like the silver accent that happens in the pattern. Right, so with that being said, let us begin. So I'm going to start with the back one because it's got the least amount of pieces, really. And I also have written on all the pieces what to cut and where they live to kind of help with that. Oh, and, sorry, the back tail lights, I cut all of it in red, and then I've just cut a little bit of orange that I'm going to stitch to the top like this. So this one won't have that silver accent around it. Because they're so little, I didn't want it to be too bulky. I've got white thread in. I will be progressively changing it as I need to. So the first thing I'm going to do is, actually, for a domestic, let's do it a different way. If you're on a domestic machine, you don't want too many layers. So the first thing I'm actually going to sew on is the window. So I'm going to center it up, and I'm going to use some double-sided tape to hold it in place. So I'm just going to put a strip in the middle. That way I'm not going to stitch over it, but it's still going to hold it where I want. And then easiest way to find the middle is to fold it like this, and then fold it like in half like this. So then you should just be able to line that up with that, and it sits in the middle. And it's stuck on with double-sided tape. Yay! All right. So I'm going to have my stitch length on 4, and I'm not going to change that for all the pieces. So we're just going to have the same stitch length. And I'm just going to stitch close to the edge. So it's probably a little bit closer than 1/8 of an inch, because I don't want it to hang. And I'm going to manually crank those corners so that I don't run off the edge. So I've gone through the first one. Now this is a fun little thing that you can do. So I've got these both hanging out here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my stiletto or my sewing awl, depending on what you call it. So this is my glorious one. And for those that love this, I am going to be stocking them soon. I'm getting some custom made ones. So then you can just pull from the back. You pull the thread to the back. Like so. I want to get the other one out as well. So we're not trying to pull out the big loops that we can see. You're actually trying to pull out the little holdy loops. So there we go. Now they're out the back. So now you can just tie them off. So I've got a silver bobbin thread today so that I can see the difference. You obviously don't have to do that, but it's probably going to make it easier. So I'm just going to tie 2 normal knots, like so, and then trim the tails down. Now, if you want to, you can also melt those with a lighter if you're feeling super excessive. Always use the blue part of the flame, so really close to here. The top part will melt and discolor your project. So that is the window on. Now we can take the piece and place that. And I'm going to stitch all the way around just to tack the edges down because it'll annoy me if they're flopping. So I'm going to start with the bottom. Now remembering that there is a seam, oops, I didn't have enough tail hanging out the back then. Remembering that there is a seam allowance, I am going to backstitch this because you won't see it. You also don't have to pull it through if you don't want to. If you're new to applique and sewing, you might want to skip that. Needle down and pivot to the next bit. Pivot. Needle down. Sometimes it always doesn't stop with the needle down. And then backstitch. So backstitching only needs to be 2 or 3 pieces. This will also help if you've got a picture handy of what you're doing. So you're going to need a ruler for the next bit. And I'm going to put it... Actually, the first thing I'm going to do is put some double-sided tape on the back so it's going to stay where I put it. It's probably a very good point. So this is the bottom accent strap. Now I'm not going to lie, I do currently have the bag next to me and I am copying it. But I am going to put this, because I'm going to have a seam allowance, I'm going to put it 1 inch up. Like so. And then just touch it because it's got double-sided tape on it. So now I'm going to stitch the top and the bottom. Again, starting at a corner because this is all part of the bag. It'll be in the seam allowance. You can stitch down the edge. You won't see it, but it's just so you don't have to do more tail cutting. And then go up the other side. And then backstitch. I'm not going to do that little bit there because it's not going to lift and move around. So now we've got 2 pieces. So now we're up to our tail lights. So the first thing I'm going to do is see if I can get a really small piece of double-sided tape because it's going to help. So I'm going to cut a little bit and then chop it in half. You could also just go and get skinnier double-sided tape than I have. I actually think I've got some in a cupboard somewhere now that I think about it. Alright. So little top bits. And then we're going to stick them on top of these. And the reason I do it this way is I just feel it's going to be easier. Sit it on the top there. You could also use like a tacky glue. You can get some that are sewing machine friendly usually in quilting sections. So you can get like a glue stick that's, I don't know, it's a quilting glue stick. Basically it dries like a kid's glue stick, but you can stitch through it without gumming up your needle, which is obviously super handy. So I'm not going to stitch them now. I'm just going to flip them over and put more double-sided tape on. I definitely wouldn't be trying this without something to tack it all together because these pieces are tiny. But they're going to look super cute. I'm also not doing my number plate, but what I would do, mainly because I forgot to cut it out, but what I would do for a number plate is just cut a rectangle and use a fabric marker to mark what name you want on that. Yes. So we want to go orange side to the top, so where the window is. And we just want to place them not all the way to the edge. And I'm going to put them in the middle of this section. So there. Then I'm going to take a ruler as to where I guessed I wanted that. And I'm going to copy it on the other side. So there's no real right or wrong answer to where you want these, just so long as you put them evenly. Keeping in mind that part of this is a seam allowance. So I have placed mine there and there, and that gives me a lot of space if I want to do a really big number plate. So if I've got if I wanted to put the whole Victoria in there, there's enough space to make a number plate to do that. I should have cut one. I might still stop the video and go get one yet. So the way I'm going to sew these on is I'm going to go across the orange and then all the way around the oval. So it's one big foul swoop, I guess. So 1, 2. I'm also going to back stitch this in that first stitch because I don't like my chances of pulling it through. And then we're going to pivot and we're going to very, very slowly. Now, if your foot tends to get a little bit rev happy, you may or may not want to maneuver around and manually stitch this. And then back through the previous hole and again, and we're on. So that was a lot of manual stitching on my behalf because even though I put in a servo motor that you can't hear, I don't actually know how to operate it because it didn't come with instructions. So there is a way to slow down the motor on this machine. I just don't know how to do it, which is fine. Very rarely do I do this anyway in these such small pieces. But I am saving up to get another servo motor for my big cylinder arm. And when I do, I'm going to start doing videos on both for you guys. I can go pretty slowly, but this is a very tight curve. But success, and that only took 12 minutes. That's actually not bad. The cutting took a lot longer. But anyway, that one looks really cool now. So again, if you want to pick a number plate, you can do colored number plates. On this particular piece, blue would probably look really nice, or green, because there's a lot of green on the side panels and none on the back. So I would probably actually do a green one and then just use either a permanent marker or a fabric texture to neatly write your number plate. All right, let's go on to, who's got the most pieces? I don't really know. Let's go on to side. So with my sides, I only cut out one of the side windows because we mirror them. So you would have to cut double what you've done for the side. I have just cut one lot to show you guys. This is purely for you guys so that you can all have hippie bags because I think it's glorious. So I've cut, these two are going to go on each side, and then on this one I wrote side middle because it's obviously the middle window. So again, we're going to start with our top piece. And we're going to find the center. Actually, we're going to put double-sided tape on everything. Then we're going to find the center. So double-sided tape is your friend. If you are going to use glue, my suggestion would be go and glue all the pieces, and then you can just sit at your machine and sew them all down. That's what I would do. I also probably wouldn't put the glue all the way to the edges because we're going to sew it down. I just kind of put a big dollop in the middle so it's going to stay tacked to where you want it to. That's my opinion. Feel free to ignore me. All right. So, side of van. Make sure you could probably do both sides at the same time. I'm also just rubbing the double-sided tape a little bit. It heats it up and helps it adhere better. It also helps to get the backing off easier. So, I'm going to use the ruler there. So I've got a ruler on my board, which makes life really, really easy. So that's going to sit there. And I'm going to place all 3 windows to make sure that I like where I've put them before I start stitching. Because if something's in the wrong spot and I've already stitched it, there's a lot of unpicking involved. Not to mention you're also going to perforate your vinyl, so you have to then try and get exactly through the first hole, which is tricky to say the least. Okay. So I'm happy with that. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to move that one just a smidgen because it felt a smidgen off. There we go. So I've only left a very little gap because the pattern only has a very little gap, because again, we have to remember that these are stitched. So you don't want to leave a big gap between here. I would say it's, I don't know, what's between a 1/4 inch and an 1/8 of an inch? 3/16? That's where we're at anyway. You can hear the recycle bin man has come to pick up all my stuff. All right, so it doesn't probably really matter where you start. I'm going to start at the bottom on the top one. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. You can do it any order you like. And again, because these are bigger pieces, I can sew with my foot a lot more than hand cranking. If you've got a domestic machine, hopefully you've got one with speed control and you can slow it right down, so you don't have to be as worried about this. And back through that first hole. Beautiful. So again, if you want to, you can use your awl and pull the stitches down to the back. But I don't think you really notice that, do you? It's only 1 stitch hole. It's not too bad. Okay, next one. And the reason we stitch them onto here before we stitch them onto here, it's not even really a thickness thing, because I haven't put the foam on yet. I put that on at the end. It's more a maneuverability. This is a lot bigger than that, so you're going to have a lot more space going on. I'm cranking my corners because they've got the nice angles. I'm trying to mimic that with my stitches, which means lots of turning and twisting. If you're wickedly new to sewing, just stitch to the corner and turn. It's not going to fall off if you don't do a curved kind of cornered stitch. I promise it will stay on. Alright, let's do another pull through one just because it's a good way to learn. So again, we're going to flick over and we're not trying to pull the big flat stitches. We're trying to pull the little ones that hold them down, which is sometimes trickier than it sounds. I mean, I can see it. There's one. The other one has been a little bit more stubborn. But sometimes if you pull from the back, you can pull it kind of through enough to see it. I can see where it is. It's right here. You just want to get there it is. So you just want to get the little. Oh, I only got half of it. Look at that. I actually managed to split the thread. Way to go on a sewing tutorial. Huh. But these things happen. Again, not the end of the world. I will get it out. You just gotta pick at it until it comes. Alternatively, if it's not gonna come, I can just singe it. Or just chop it off in general. I've got the bulk out the back anyway. So then I'm just going to grab, you can even just grab 2 at a time and tie them in a double knot. Cut them off, singe them down. It's like they never existed. Okay. That's a double knot, nice and tight. By singeing the end of that, it kind of just ensures that it will never ever come undone without cutting it off. And that looks really neat too, for those that want to see a close-up. All right, next one. Nope. I gotta remember to pull more tail out. And now I'm also going to want to try and go exactly through those holes I just made in my vinyl. So we're going to start in that one, and it should, there we go through them all. Up the other side. So this is one of those days where I will not be speed sewing. Back in that one. Done skis. Leave a little bit at the back, singe it off. You can touch it, it shouldn't burn your hand. It hasn't burnt me yet in all the times I've done it. Windows. Oh! Sorry, I get really excited. Appliques are not one of those things that I love to do to begin with, so when they work the way I want them to first time, it's very exciting. I'm lazy. I have an embroidery machine that does this for me. Not lazy, efficient. Apparently I'm efficient. Alright, so now I'm going to stitch it onto the main panel. And then just around the edge. So you're not going to see these stitches. They'll be in our seams. But it's just going to tack everything down so that nothing moves. And again, you could have tacked this down first. So if you forget to put your windows on and sew the white panel on first, that's okay. You can still do it. It's just more fabric to maneuver. That's all. Okay, wheels. Let's do this. So each wheel for me has 3 pieces, a black, a white, and a grey. So the grey is the hubcap, and I have lost the hubcap. Oh no. That's all right. I'll find it. So I did the wheel as the full circle. Then I cut out the white wool tie apart. Oh, there it is. Ha! Ha 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 ha. And then I've also got the inner hubcap as a different one. So rather than trying to piece all of those perfectly together and having to cut a lot of black, I'm just going to set it up like this. Now, please forgive my cutting. Everybody thinks that I'm a good cutter. I am here to tell you right now that when cutting applique, I am not. I see my white's a bit wonky. But that is because I didn't interface my pattern pieces. So that would be another tip for you. Not interface, sorry. Laminate. It's kind of interfacing. It's interfacing for fabric. To make it stiffer. It works. I'm okay with it. Either way, laminate your pattern pieces before you try measuring things out. Because they are such small pieces, you will notice imperfections. Mainly in this one. I'm actually going to see if I can fix it without making it worse. It could go either way. We'll see. You could also, if you wanted to, you could skip the white wool tire. You don't have to have it. I just want it because I owned a 76 Kingswood that had white wool tires and it looked cool. But if you just wanted to do that as your wheel, totally acceptable. You just skip the white bit. Right. Hubcap, wheels. They look like wheels. It's still going to work. Also, probably not going to get any double-sided tape on this because it's tiny. So I'm going to have to hold it. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to attempt to stitch 2 lines. Although it's probably thin enough I can just get away with 1. Right. Because I've cut mine so thin, I am actually now, have decided, I am just going to stitch 1 line through the center. Which sounds easy, but now I've got to get it in the center, which is a whole new set of problems. Because we're constantly turning. So you may want to hand crank this. All right. Very happy I didn't try and do 2 lines. Also, don't look too closely at my stitches because it turns out it's not perfectly round. But it is on. And I feel like on is still a win. And the main reason it doesn't look very neat is because of my dodgy cutting. But from here, looks good. Looks like a wheel. So now for the middle, it's big enough. I can attach some double-sided tape. Just a little square of it. Smooth it out. Peel the backing off. Stick it in the middle. Boom. See, this one won't move. Way easier. Also, if you wanted to get fancy, you could, and I'm going to because I'm ridiculous, I'm going to draw a pattern that I'm going to stitch on. So, you could do a couple of things. Because it's a hippie van, you could make this a spiral, which would be super fun. You could do a star. You could just stitch across and across. I think I'm going to do a star. So this is an erasable texture. Pen, not texture. You can get texture versions though. So I'm just going to, because I'm ridiculous, draw, not with that one, it's empty. Draw a star shape. So it's like a pentagram shape because that's going to be the easiest. I can just go side to side. So it's very faint, but I am going to show you. I can see all the lines from here. You may not be able to on camera, but I'll be able to see that. So that's the shape I'm going to stitch. And then I'm also going to copy that onto here. All right, that one just needs to go out a little bit more. So these are friction textures. You can literally erase them. That's what the back of them are for. It's literally an eraser, which I think is really cool. Okay. So now that I have my beautiful star, I'm going to start in a corner. Stitch a star, because funnily enough, this will actually be easier than trying to stitch the perfect circle. So this is like a cool cheats code. You may not believe me, but I promise it's going to be glorious. And you can do any shape you like. Obviously a spiral would be more difficult. You could do a square, you could do some triangles. Or you could do none of this and just go around the edge. This is just the coolest. Look at that! Super fun! Super quick! Alright. Now I've brought this over to show you what not to do. So when trying to make your wheels, don't cut all the pieces and try and slot them together and then stitch them flat. While flat is sometimes good, trying to get that to fit perfectly is going to be hell. So we don't want to cut that out. We just want to cut a full half circle because I promise it's just easier. All right, so then I'm going to take my white wall. Now this will line up flat with the edge, so you know where to put it. And again, if you've got the glue, glue it down. And if you don't, you probably won't get double-sided tape on it. So you're just going to have to wing it like me. So I would just do like 2 or 3 stitches and then maneuver it to try and get that nice arch. But again, I'm using white. So if my stitches aren't glorious, they're not going to attract attention. If I had have done this in black, that's a whole new problem. Okay, more double-sided tape. And again, you'll notice I'm building the wheels off here because again, it's easier. Not only is it less layers, but I can maneuver that much easier than a giant bus. We're doing well for time. It's only half an hour in. Not that there's really a time limit. I will stitch until we're done. All right, I've stuck it on. I can see where my star shape is meant to look like. I'm going to manually crank that last one to make sure it doesn't run away where I don't want it. Right, and so now that one still looks like it's got a star going on. To get rid of the lines, again, you can either friction them away or you can just apply a little bit of steam to your bag, or you can just rub it off like that. Friction textures react to heat, so that's what the friction is, obviously. So if you just iron, obviously you can't iron over this because this is vinyl, but if you just shoot at it with a shot of steam, it will also erase your lines for you. Okay, wheel time. So our front wheel, we want to line up so it's 2/3 of it is in front of the window line, if that makes sense. So there's your window line, and I don't want it to be perfectly centered, it's too far back. I want it to be 2/3 of the way that way, and I want to make sure it's not going to be in my seam allowance. So I'm going to put some double-sided tape on it so it stays where I put it. That's probably a good point. Right. Do that, and then 2/3 of the way in front. Right there. Boom. Love it. I'm going to stick the other one on just while I'm here. So this one, I am going to line up in line centrally with the back window. I'm going to make sure that this is the same height up, and then I'm going to just line it up with the back window. Whoops. So I'll turn it this way so I can get a better grip or handle on it. There. All right. It's lined up with the back window. They're both the same height off the base. And this wheel is 2/3 of the way in front of this window. So now we just got to stitch them on. I am actually going to change out my white thread for black for this because we are mainly stitching black. And I don't want to see my stitches unnecessarily. So I'm going to switch it to black, literally for this one thing. And then we're going to switch back to white again. But it's going to be worth it. You could also skip it and do it at the end because we've got to change colors. But I am being strategic, so we're not doing that. But you feel free to just do this at the end. Just make sure that you do it and don't forget it because that would also suck. You make your whole bag and then realize your wheels are stuck on with sticky tape. Not ideal. I'm going to leave my bobbin thread the same too, by the way, because you don't see it. And then we're just going to sew across the top, nice and close to the edge. Obviously we're in black, but that's got so many color changes, you can't help that. If you wanted to, you could probably make your own wheel arch. So you could take some vinyl that's the same color as the bag and just do the wheel arch shape. Again, circles are painful things, but it will be worth it because this bag's going to look epic. Make sure that we backstitch. Now, black on black, you actually really can't see the stitches. Look at that. Look at my dodgy cutting of the front wheel. We can't all be good at everything. That's okay. It still works. It still looks cool. If I turn that into a bag, that's still going to look like a combi van. Like, you get the idea. It looks wicked. I've got like a 6-foot rule. If you can stand 6 feet back, or 1.5 meters back, and it looks good, it's good to go. So anyway, we're finished with black. All of that, and we're done. So we're going to switch back to the white. You'll also notice that I don't rethread my entire machine. That is efficiency, also known as lazy, but whatever. What I do is I chop the thread off a little bit earlier and then just pull it through. So the main bit I have issues with is at my tension disc because it's tight. But I lift my my knee lift, so I lift this foot all the way up and it slides through pretty well. And that was a lot quicker than having to rethread. I don't do this on a domestic, just so you know. There's no need. Domestics, I can do one-handed without moving anything. But this has got a lot of like loops and turns that you have to get through. And that's not fun. So now I'm going to put this one aside. So we've done 2 panels. To make the other side of your bag, I'm not going to do it in this video because it's just to teach you how to do it. So you would just do it the same, but obviously it would be in reverse. So you just put that wheel there and that wheel there because the angle would be over this side. That's the same principle. On to the front. The front has, I think, has most pieces. So that's why I left it till last. I'm also going to take all of my pattern pieces. So again, with the front windows, I just cut one reversed. So they're going to sit in the middle like this. Also, if you wanted to get super fancy and you're really good at free motion quilting, you could put on some little like windscreen wipers. That'd be cute. It's not really something that I'd be good at because I suck at free motion quilting, but it would look cool. All right, let's start with this bad boy. It's a double-sided tape. You know, I could probably double-sided tape everything at the same time. That's probably a smart move. Where possible, try and keep it out of the seams that you're going to sew. So while I do want double-sided tape on this, you'll also notice it's nowhere near the edge because it's a big piece. So I've got it where I'm not going to stitch it, but it's still going to hold for me. Because you don't want to gum up your needle. Not that I have issues with this, but some domestics will, or if you get like a super strong sticky tape, you may have some issues. So I'm just going to stick all my pieces now. The only one I won't be able to do is the peace sign, because it's, oh actually, and the little headlights, because they are very, very small and fine details. And I also have an alternative to these. So these are like the world's smallest circles, and excuse my filthy fingernails, I've just realized. These are like really, really small. However, these would look really cool if you replace them with these. So these are crystal rivets, which by the way are almost the same size. So you could have shiny front lights instead. You could probably get these in orange, but this would be like a fun alternative to stitching down the tiny circle. You could use sparkle rivets or rhinestone rivets, or I don't really know what they're called. I do have some red ones on my website, I think. I did have. Alright. Anyway. I'm going to stitch them on because that's who I am today. It's fine. It's fine. So this line has to be at the same height as this line. Or at least they're meant to be. So whatever we did for the other one, we're going to do for this one. Because consistency is key. And to be honest, if you have them a little bit off, they're at the front and the back of the boss. So you're less likely to notice. Right. Off we go. I haven't changed my stitch length. I'm just changing the colour of my thread over and over. And just for quickness sake, I'm going to go up the side. And then back along the top. And back stitch. Now I didn't do this little side again because that is not going to flap around. I'd actually be surprised if I could even separate it. I can, but I'd have to use these to separate that, which means it's not going to flop around, which means it's fine. Okie dokie. So this is where this is going to sit. I've put my line a little bit high, but that's okay. They touch on the other bag anyway, so it's fine. Which is why I'll be touching now, because these come with the applique bit. So on the edge is theoretically the satin stitch that goes around the edge of it. So that's why this will be touching. Which is fine. Alright, so I've pulled off all the backing to the double-sided tape, and then I'm just going to line it up and push it down. I'm going to stitch this on. If you wanted to, we probably could have done these first. The windows, that is. That way. Like that. But we didn't because I've already stuck it down now. So this is happening. Also, if you were going to do it that way, don't pre-sticky tape all of your pieces. So this is like a nice, easy curve. And then we're going to do a really tight curve at the nose. And then to tack everything down, I am just going to go 1/8 of an inch around all the edge so it doesn't flop. So the embroidery pattern actually tacks all this down, so we're going to do it too. It's funny that I forgot to put the windows on when I literally said in the first bit, it's okay if you forget. I just forgot. Okay, I'm going to peel off the backings. Now, this point is the center. So, realistically, if you wanted to, you could just put a ruler on there and then line them up. So you want a little bit of a gap, but not too much, and you don't want them to be too high or too low. And we also need to fit this in, so we just need to play a little bit of guessing game. Really? It's a guessing game. So that one there, and then an even gap. So these ones have a wider gap here than my side panel, wherever I've put it. Oh, I don't know where it went. Of course I don't. Is it on the floor? It's always on the floor. Back panel. Ah, there it is, on the floor. Told ya. Everything goes on the floor. Right, so the gap here on these ones is smaller than the gap on the front ones. That is true for the embroidered version, so it's true for this one. Okay, so now we're going to stitch around the windows. Just start wherever you want. My suggestion is always have the bulk of your stuff out of your machine where possible. It's obviously not going to be possible in a second when I change directions, but as a general rule of thumb for sewing, where possible, have the bulk out of the machine. Because on a domestic, you usually don't have a very big gap. I don't know what the rest of that sentence was. I just stopped. Sorry. I was concentrating. So yeah, on a domestic machine, you don't have a bigger throat. This is called the throat. So therefore it's harder to maneuver bigger items through there. And again, you'll notice that I'm manually cranking the corners because I'm trying to make the stitches look more curved, even though they're straight lines. Windows. So now the peace sign, oh, actually no, not now the peace sign. Now the headlights, because I need to stitch these on in white, and then I'm going to switch to grey to stitch this and these on, and then I'm going to switch to orange to stick the other ones on. So in the center as best you can. And again, I'm about to stitch through double-sided tape anyway, because there's some on the back of the silver, which was not smart on my behalf. Should have done it as I was going, like I was. But that's okay. Not the end of the world. We can fix anything. You almost need to do a stitch and twist. Back stitch, pull her out, chain stitch. Let's do the next one. Yoink. Now if I had a hand stitched and hand cranked every single one of those, I could have made it a more perfect circle. But to be honest, I'm not worried. Nobody's going to be staring at this. It's on. And that's the main point. All right. Let's grab some silver and do the next one. So the faster, the more appliques you do, the faster you will get. You can probably tell I don't do these a lot. They're not impossible to me. I just have an embroidery machine that does it for me, is pretty much the thing there. So if I want a skull on a bag, I could applique one, or I can just shove it in my machine and walk away. So that's definitely the perk of owning an embroidery machine. But then the downside is you also have to be able to find the file that you want, because I can't digitize. And I don't have time to learn. It's like a very steep learning curve. Okay. So now, in my infinite wisdom, since I have stitched through the double-sided tape, I now have to, actually that come off pretty easily because I'd stitched through it, like perforated. That worked out surprisingly well. Cool. So the way these work is the lights are going to go here, and then these little ones are going to come out to the side. Now, I think I've made my ones of these a little bit too big, but that's okay. And then those ones will go there. And then that is going to go there. And then we're going to have, I can't lift it up. We're going to have a really cool combi van. Hippy van. Whatever we're going to be calling it. It's a hippie van. It's got the hippie symbol. Right. Slow and steady wins the race with applique. Anybody that's hurrying, you're most likely going to make a mistake. While I do have my eye on the time, and this is already a 50-minute video, I'm not rushing. You guys will turn it off if I'm boring you. It's pretty much how that goes. But if you don't watch my whole video, you don't know what random things I'll remember to tell you. It's the flip side of that. Peace symbol. Now again, it's skinny, so I'm just going to sew the center. You might think that's lazy. I don't really care. I'm going to start down the top. Like that. And then I'm going to do the circle part. Or at least attempt to. And then I'm going to try and go through the same stitch holes as where I started so that I can come up and do this bit. Now, while I don't think it's going to fall off, it would look weird if it's the only bit that hasn't got stitching. So I'm doing it. And weirdly enough, you can barely tell I went back through the same holes. I'm going to show you up close. You can't even tell I went through the double holes there. I mean, you can see that my stitching is very dodgy, but if I hold it here, you can't tell. See? For the win. All right. Orange thread. Luckily for me, I have like every thread color under the sun. But again, another way to skip this is to use rivets that are pretty colors. In fact, you could even put rivets over an embroidered bag, now that I think of it. That would still look cool too, because then they'd be shiny. You could also use some gem bond glue and just glue on like rhinestones of any description. That would be cool too. Alright, I am not even going to attempt to go around these circles. So I'm going to do a crisscross to stitch them down because I'm in the same colour. Like a button, back and forth, crisscross. And that may seem lazy to you, but I dare you to try and stitch that circle. It's like the size of my fingernail. There's limits to my power, and that is outside of my power. But the crisscross still works. It's like a cute little detail, and it won't look like you're being lazy. Right in the middle. Back stitch up that way, down that way. Yes. And then trim off all the tails that I missed before. Ha-ha! Boom! Combi van. Hippie van. Because it's a hippie symbol. Right. I'm just not doing a second one. This is a 53-minute video already. But there are how to do it without an embroidery machine. Please try it. Come show me. She's also got a Facebook group. I will find it and link it to this video. Thanks for stopping by. Bye, guys.